Hello, everyone, and welcome to Reap the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delaila Lugo.
And I'm Jason Kwasnicki, the best of the bunch.
I don't know why you guys paused so much in between that. Jeez. It's a good thing I didn't forget this time to introduce us, considering last episode I totally just went right into it. This is a gaming spoilercast. This is a podcast where we take a video game, we play it, we spoil it, we talk about it for like 2 hours, just nothing but talking about that video game. So if the title of the game is a game that you have not played, I suggest that you pause the episode now, go play that game, then come back and unpause the episode and listen to us talk about said game. I don't want to be your first exposure to any game that we talk about on this quality program. Especially not this one.
Program? What are we, British?
I really don't want to be your first foray into Delaila. What game are we talking about?
The Last of Us.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil The Last of Us for you. I want you to go play The Last of Us and then come back to this podcast and hear us talk about The Last of Us. Because it's a really good video game. It's a game,
and you can kill it in a weekend. It's very well paced.
Yes, it is. I'd say I don't think I'm speaking for anyone or speaking out of line by saying we all really like this game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't want to be the one to ruin it for you. So go play this game, then come back and then listen. If you already have played this game and you just want us to get on with it, I apologize. We'll get on with it.
But we're also getting on with Left Behind, the DLC.
Yes, we'll also be talking about Left Behind. That's actually a good point. If you haven't played Left Behind, go do that too.
It's only 2 hours.
We're going to be talking about that. Probably not for much. I feel like there's not too much to say about it, but we are going to talk about it, so we don't want to spoil it for you.
Wasted my time making me play that shit, Mark.
All right.
No.
So, another thing to note is at the time of this recording, it's June 10th. That means The Last of Us Part 2 is right around the corner. And we'll be talking more about that. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. In our next episode. But we will not be discussing anything regarding the sequel in this episode, which means we won't be talking about any of the trailers, any of the footage, any of the leaks. None of that. We'll be.
What about hopes?
We will be talking about some hopes, but
okay.
But nothing that would spoil your experience for that game either. So all that said, shall we jump into a little bit of a brief history lesson?
Yep.
Jason, are you ready?
Yeah, you don't gotta ask.
I absolutely
I'm
have to
always
ask.
ready.
We got to take this journey together. I got to make sure that you're
We're
fastened in.
We're embarking on an epic quest.
Absolutely. Okay, so development of The Last of Us began actually in 2009 after Uncharted 2 shipped. They split the team at Naughty Dog for like the first time, I think since there was a team that worked on Jack X and Uncharted Drake's Fortune at the same time. So, but this was like the biggest split. Jack X was kind of like a side game, whereas these were two major games. Yes. These were two major games that they had a split team working on one and the other team on the other. So one of the teams was working on Uncharted 3 while the other was developing this new IP, The Last of Us. Neil Druckmann, the creative director, he kind of had the idea to merge a game that I really like, Eco, from 2001, with concepts from Night of the Living Dead and have a protagonist similar to the main character of Sin City.
That one baffles me. I'm familiar with Frank Miller's work there, and obviously, I'm sure you guys have seen the movie as well. And
I actually haven't.
I do not see the connection at all, but fair enough if that's what he believes.
The character he had in mind was John Hartigan, if that means.
Yeah, John Hartigan is the character. If you've seen the movie adaptation by Robert Rodriguez, he's played by Bruce Willis. He's a detective who is framed and goes to jail and weirdly falls in love with the little girl he saves at the beginning.
Ah.
He's like 50 and she's like 19. It's weird.
Delilah's face right now looks so disgusted.
Well, he saves her again.
But anyway, yeah, it's interesting. I actually didn't know that about about the sort of concepts he had behind this whole idea. But yeah, that was his like original thought process. I also found it interesting. I watched the Grounded making of documentary for The Last of Us, and I didn't know that initially infected were going to be in the game, and they removed them because they didn't really know how to make it work with the gameplay, and they ultimately decided to focus on the human interactions in a post-apocalyptic world. And Neil and I forget who else in the documentary talked about this. They were watching Planet Earth, and there was a segment on the cordyceps fungi. And they thought that would be a really cool concept. The cordyceps fungi typically affecting insects. They thought it would be really cool. Well, what if it mutated to affect humans?
Yeah,
And
even cooler, and I just wanted to interject here. If you go back, there was some Game Awards show where Neil was kind of just going over some early concepts for the cordyceps. And originally, like, it was supposed to be centered around literally the infected becoming like a hive mind. So the female infected were supposed to be like hive queens. It was supposed to be like a lot more alien. Apparently Neil said he felt it was a little too sexist to portray women in that way. I don't know. But they decided to scrap that idea. But originally it was supposed to be something like really crazy, like almost like a Borg, if you're familiar with the Star Trek universe type concept.
Cool. I did not come across that. That is really interesting. But yeah, they because of this discovery of the cordyceps fungi and finding that inspiration, the infected were added back into the game. So when Uncharted 3 released in 2011, there was actually an Easter egg teasing The Last of Us that a lot of people kind of didn't notice for a long time. There was a newspaper I believe it was in the bar in Pittsburgh. Funnily enough, that same bar appears in The Last of Us.
Yeah.
There was a newspaper that was kind of hinting at some sort of infection outbreak somewhere in the world, which was ultimately referencing this. And later that year at the Spike Video Game Awards, remember those?
Yeah.
Thank God that doesn't happen anymore. The Spike Video Game Awards, December 2011, The Last of Us was officially announced and revealed. The game was originally
Naughty Dog multiverse.
Yeah.
And the bigger question, does Jack and Daxter exist in this multiverse?
Oh man, not anymore. That's another thing. Jack and they actually chose to make this game over a new Jack and Daxter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I feel pretty okay because if you look at the concept art and you see Jack's new design, like I can't imagine that game existing on the same plane as the Jack trilogy.
One day, Jack will return. It's like the end of the credits of like a James Bond movie.
But yeah, they chose to make this game over Jack 4. But anyway, gameplay for the game debuted, I believe, at E3 2012. Think we all remember. I remember that reveal pretty well. That was it was really cool. It's what sold me on the game. But the original game, or the game, was originally dated for May 7th, 2013. It got delayed, as typical fashion with Naughty Dog games. Delayed and released officially on June 14th, 2013, to widespread critical acclaim.
Surprising. That's exactly what happened with The Last of Us 2 in terms of delay.
Yeah, in terms of delay. And
Yeah, we'll see.
we'll see about the critical acclaim. We'll
yeah.
report back next episode with our findings on that. So yeah, that's all I got. I want to keep those things brief.
You know what? We're not just entertaining; we are educating.
You're damn
What
right,
actually
Jason.
sold me on this game was it was a demo for I think God of War 3 or God of War Ascension.
Oh,
One of the
God of War Ascension, yeah.
Yeah. When I played it there, I was like, oh, I'm getting this for sure.
You had my attention. Or wait, I
You
fucked
have
it
my-
up. Damn it! You had my curiosity. Now you have my attention.
All right, do we want to just dive in?
Yes.
We ready to talk
Let's
about
go.
ready to talk about this game?
Yeah, if you didn't know, people, we always begin with the end.
Yeah, I think now we finally got into our groove, and we figured it out at the beginning of the show. We introduce the names of all the people that are on the fucking show first and foremost, and then we do a little
Of
history
course.
lesson, and then I would
Like
never
most shows tend to do.
I would never forget to do that. And then do a history lesson, and then talk about the ending right off the bat, because it's the thing everyone wants to talk about. So let's talk about the fucking ending of The Last of Us, which was a very divisive one in 2013.
Yeah, one that people are still talking about.
Yeah, yes they are. So
I don't know, is divisive the right word? I mean, it was like,
yeah,
I don't even think
because
controversial is the right word. I think it's more like
divisive.
impactful. I don't know.
Let's put it
Was
this way: it's
I don't
divisive.
remember. I don't really remember much, but like, did people hate it?
No, it wasn't divisive in the sense of people loved or hated it. It was divisive because do you agree or disagree
Oh.
Yeah.
with Joel's
I see.
decision?
The
Yeah.
the moral question.
I thought you meant in terms of like people's feelings
No,
towards it.
it was. I
Okay.
think everybody in general like loved the ending. I like no matter what side of the ending you came out on, you liked it.
I think it's one of the best endings in video games.
Yeah, it was a very good way, or a very good way to end that story. Yeah.
So yeah, like I don't want to speak for all of us in this. I feel like we haven't talked about this game in so long and talked about our feelings on the ending that I feel like we should talk about it. Do we agree with Joel's decision?
Yes. So this is where my opinions changed.
Oh, wait, okay. Did you have a different opinion when you played through the game?
Sorry, hold on. Delaila was about to say
No,
something. I
Okay.
just wanna let her-
Finish your thought,
Oh.
because
I
I'm
th-
gonna
so
go on.
I figure at this rate we just need to go down the line now. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Delaila. So when I first I've only beaten this game once, and when I first went through it, I kind of just breezed through. I didn't really pay attention to much. Not that I didn't pay attention to the dialogue, but I kind of wasn't really thinking about it that much, and I wasn't reading through collectibles and like listening to stuff.
That's a shame.
This time I really paid attention, and I read the collectibles.
Oh, they're so good.
Like literally all of them, including Marlene's stuff, like her journals, her recordings, and whatnot. And I was really paying attention to the dialogue. And so when I originally played the game, my conclusion was that, from a philosophical perspective, what Joel did was wrong, and what the Fireflies were trying to do was right. But if you actually think about it from a moral perspective, Joel is in the right. The Fireflies are in the wrong. Basically, Joel is putting forth a moral argument. And the key to this, and what I didn't think about originally, is that Ellie has no agency in this situation. She is unconscious. She has no idea what has happened. She has no idea that she's in this laboratory and is about to have her brain dissected. She's not given the choice explicitly. And the Fireflies essentially put Joel in a position where it's not like he can go and wake her up and ask her, hey, what do you want? So really what he's doing, because the argument on the other side that the Fireflies are putting forth is this is the best thing for mankind. That's not a moral argument. That's a utilitarian argument. It's what you would perhaps call... So a lot of people categorize Joel as an anti-hero, which I guess you could. In the most
know.
in the most strictest definition of what an anti-hero is, somebody with good aims who uses not the best methods. The Fireflies are anti-villains in the sense that they have what is ostensibly a noble goal, but they're also using terrible methods. Wait, that doesn't make sense.
Their methods aren't exactly noble as much
they're
as
making they're making a utilitarian argument, which is not. They're not making a moral argument. They're making a utilitarian argument, which is essentially this is for the greater good. But they haven't bothered to do the right thing by asking Ellie if this is what she wants. They're just going to say, all right, we don't care what she wants. We are just going to use brute force and take it from her, which, regardless of what you think of the greater good, is fundamentally immoral.
My perspective on it is that they're both wrong. Like, Marlene is the Firefly leader, and the Fireflies and Joel are all wrong, but I understand why both sides did what they did. Joel loved Ellie. He lost his daughter at the beginning of the game. There was a connection. He didn't want to lose another daughter because by the end of the game, Ellie is Joel's daughter. And so I understand, like, I'm not a parent, but I feel like if I was a parent, I wouldn't want my kid to die for the greater of
I
good.
would do the same. If I was in that position, I would do the same exact thing Joel did.
Right. But as the Fireflies, like, I get they wanted to save humanity, and this was the only person. Ellie's death was the only way for them to be able to achieve that, for them to have a vaccine for this infection. And I get wanting to do that. However, that's not the Fireflies' decision to make, and that's not Joel's decision to make. That was Ellie's decision.
Right.
And Ellie was never given the chance from Joel or from the Fireflies to make that decision, and I think that's wrong, because I think that she was old enough and smart enough to be able to make that decision for herself. And I do think ultimately, if she was given the choice, she would have chose to kill herself for the greater good. But nobody ever asked her that question. And I think where Joel went wrong is not in so much saving her, but lying to her when she asked what's actually happening.
I wanted to bring that up.
Oh, okay.
No. That's continue on. I wanted to make sure that got brought up, because when we're talking about did Joel do the right thing, do you agree or disagree with him? It's not just about the act of stopping the Fireflies from performing the brain surgery. It's not just about saving her from dying. It's also about lying to her face when she told him, swear to me that what you're telling me is true. And he swears that that's the truth. Here's flat out lies
the thing, though. If he tells her the truth, she's going to carry that guilt for the rest of her life. So I can sympathize a lot with what he did. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know if I could give a definitive answer for that, because at that point, there's nothing you can do. You can't go back and reverse everything. So she's either going to live the rest of her life bearing that pain, or she can maybe start a new life back at Tommy's. I also just want to interject real quick the reason I brought up the collectibles. And actually, this is the one good thing that came from, in terms of information and adding to the story, that I got from the Left Behind DLC. Marlene is a fucking psychopath. She is an extremist. She's recruiting 14-year-old girls, children, to fucking be terrorists, essentially. She is not taking into account any ramifications. I mean, to quote a great book by Orson Scott Card, Ender's Game, it's not about if we win, or I'm sorry, how we win matters just as much as winning. Even if you have a worthy cause, if your methodologies are not worthy of them, you understand what I'm saying? And her journals clearly indicate that there's some kind of psychological breakdown going on inside of her. She's growing desperate because of the people she's losing, which is understandable. But still, she's not all together. She's pretty radical.
Yeah, I want Mark to he hasn't really spoken on his perspective, but I just want to say
Mark.
Your point, Jason, is a lot more apparent in the DLC Left Behind when you see Riley, because Riley was basically recruited to the Fireflies. And she's kind of talking about how like Marlene is consistently testing her to do like things that she doesn't necessarily
She
want
tries
to do
to
bad
kill her.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
she
and
and like she
and
talked
there's a
about
testing.
the
There's a testing ritual where she has to fucking kill. They make her kill somebody. Like, no.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
like an initiation that she had to go through, and she didn't even want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, did pretty much traumatize a 14-year-old girl and indirectly, which is pretty fucked up. As far as my perspective, I mean, I don't have much to disagree with. I was just I was enjoying hearing you guys talk about this. It's pretty much all what I have to say too. It's not necessarily about what's right, what's wrong. It is about just whether or not, if you put yourself in his position, what would you have done? And I think most people would agree, like, fuck humanity, that's my daughter.
Yeah.
Right.
And to see their journey throughout the entire game, like, there's no other decision that he possibly would have made.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think the special thing about survival horror games and just the genre period, like even like The Walking Dead, um, everything's pretty morally gray. Like when you're surviving, there's no right or wrong. So it's kind of hard to like see the black and white when like you're basically you feel the good person is the story you're following. Had Marlene been the main protagonist, I'm sure we would have saw a little bit more of the light side of her and kind of understood why she was doing what she was doing a lot more. I feel like in survivor horror genre, you're the good person is the story that you're with, the person, your companion, you know, so to speak. And in this story, we had Joel and Ellie, so of course we're going to be more drawn to understanding his decision because he's the story that we experienced.
and we grow to care about those characters, that relationship, and it's
Yeah.
more meaningful to us than Ellie being able to save, all these things we've been killing throughout the entire game. Um,
Yeah,
or
'cause
even any fireflies or anyone that might get infected, and it's, to me, it's, or to us now, I guess it is a more obvious choice, but in 2013, like, that was the big conversation, was did he do the right thing?
Right.
yeah,
And
because sorry.
no, it's okay, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say because we could say like Marlene is like a little crazy for like raising 14-year-olds to be like terrorists or whatever. But like is a 14-year-old girl in this world, you know?
Yeah.
Like I feel like that like in that kind of world, that doesn't like being a kid doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah. And again, yeah, that the bigger question of is not is more so of, did he do the right thing by lying to Ellie? And um I think I feel like I go back and forth, but Jason, you bring up a good point where she would have to deal with that guilt the rest of her life. And even if she knows that he's not actually telling the truth, even if she knows that, like, something did go horribly wrong, and she figures out, like, just from context, I guess, of everything, that, like, yeah, she would have had to die on some operating table. um I have to imagine not knowing that, like, in its entirety is better than being told everything.
And I think it's supposed to be implied that she knows he's not telling the truth.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have to be a fucking idiot, and she's not an idiot. Like, and from her facial expression, I get that feeling that she does.
Yeah.
I think the more important part is that she understands why he's doing it, and the fact that he says, that he swears to her, it's that line kind of closes both Joel's character arc and Ellie's character arc at the same time, and cements the relationship even further.
Yeah.
And I think that's more important to her, that she has somebody who's not going to leave her, because part of her arc is attachment issues.
Yeah.
So
She feels like everyone that she gets close to is going to die because that's what's happened to her.
right.
And Joel was like the first like person that she felt like would be a survivor by her side.
Yep. Um during that ending, she brings up a couple people that were close to her that died. We kind of already touched on Riley a bit. We'll go back to Riley later in the episode. I don't want to neglect talking about her because she is more important than that final line kind of lets on. But let's talk about some of the other characters that we meet throughout the story. Something I actually didn't know and found to be interesting. Tess was originally going to be the main villain. And they could. Well, that's the thing, is they couldn't find a reasonable way to make her motivations make sense. And Troy Baker, actually, voice of Joel, he kind of changed the script a bit and gave his input in that he felt that Tess and Joel would kind of, after working together for so long, would grow to care for each other, and she kind of became this, I don't know, I guess we could call her a love interest. She was at the very least a close partner of Joel's. So she kind of evolved from being the main antagonist of the game to being his partner, so to speak.
It's not even really implied that there was so much a love interest, and it's not really necessary. The important part is that they were close.
Correct.
Yeah.
That could be platonic or whatever.
There was like really subtle flirting.
Yeah.
I think there was one point where she was like keep your eyes on me, or something really subtle.
And he calls her ma'am all the time, and
I
you're
think
the
that's
boss
just his.
and all that.
I think that's just his Texan hospitality.
I've had Texan friends. Trust me, it can be very much flirting.
So yeah, I think the implication was that they have a history. They've been working together a long time. And there are subtle hints that maybe they're more than just like partners in crime, but maybe partners in general.
Mm-hmm. Friends with benefits.
I think I've always like associated it with like they're practically like common law married. If we want to put it that way. But the bigger point that we're trying to get at, I guess, is that they had good chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They had really good chemistry, and even with the beginning of the two of them smuggling Ellie out of the city, they all started to warm up to one another until she gets bit and dies in a last stand against the military. Cool thing, actually. There's like in earlier scenes before she reveals the bite. After she gets bit in the museum, like you can see the bite under her collar.
Ah.
If you look for it, you can see it. So
Cool.
Why were you looking under her collar, Mark?
No, because it's kind of obvious. It's like right there.
Oh, yeah, okay.
There were a few things in this game that I was looking for, and I'll just use a quick example before we move on to the next character. When you're in one of the toy stores and you're with Henry and Sam, who we'll talk about later, and I knew that Ellie was going to pick up that Gundam for Sam, so I was like, when does she do it? And I see her like standing by it the whole time, and so I'm staring at her and she's just standing by it, and then I look away, and then I look back at her and she grabs it and puts it in her bag real quick. But like, had I not played the game already, I wouldn't have looked for that, and it's nice to see that like they include those little details. Subtle.
On that note, because you brought up like the Gundam real quick. Throughout the game, there are so many like cool comic books and various movies. Like they try to build, like obviously it's supposed to be the real world, but in terms of like the pop culture of that real world, like they throw in so much stuff that just doesn't exist. Like so many original ideas, like posters from movies and TV shows and
like
video games. I almost want I want Naughty Dog to take one of those ideas and make an actual game out of it.
I think I remember in like 2013, 2014, a lot of people were thinking like and hoping, I hope Naughty Dog's next game is a Savage Starlight game.
Right.
Which I wouldn't be opposed to. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't.
Which, by the way, like for like a comic book media franchise, like that is on like the level of Marvel in this universe. There are Savage Starlight posters, T-shirts, comics everywhere in that world if you go
Yeah.
looking for them. You find it everywhere.
There's Triple Phoenix. There's
Oh,
what's the name of the fighting game? The girl with the claws.
Oh my god.
The turning. The turning.
Is
Oh
it?
yeah.
I know the character is
Is
Angel
it?
Knives.
Yeah,
Angel
I think
Knives. That's it. That's what I was.
I
That's
think
what I
the
was
game is
thinking
called
of.
The Turning.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
yeah, and well, my favorite was the very clear the Clash knockoff, The Bash.
Yeah, yeah.
That you see like signed posters everywhere. Like Sarah, when I started my second playthrough, like Sarah has a signed poster in her bedroom of The Bash.
Yeah.
Like, wow,
Yeah.
this band is huge. Everyone loves this band apparently in this universe.
Yeah.
But
and there's also
yeah,
that Dawn of the Wolf
I really do hope
2.
there's like a team cordoned off at Naughty Dog somewhere working on one of those new IPs.
Savage Starlight game.
Dude, that I would be so down for that. Like a Naughty Dog space opera, yeah, sign me up.
So you mentioned Sam and Henry. We could talk about Sam and Henry a bit.
Yeah, just to make a quick point about Tess and Joel, like I like that if they did have romance, that wasn't the focal point of it. And I think that this game, in terms of demonstrating romance, it doesn't like throw anything in your face and make it so like obvious and vulgar. Like you don't need to see every character making out to know that there's a connection there. And that's just a testament to all Naughty Dog games. Like they're just so good at making characters. And
Actually,
Tess was a badass when she died.
Except for Ellie joking about dried up cum on a
Oh
porno
yeah,
mag.
we'll get there.
Well, actually, because this is a really good segue into one of my favorite characters. Let's talk about Bill
Mine
real
too.
fast because I love Bill.
Bill's probably my favorite.
This is another this character that they handled super well because it is laid on very thick, heavily implied that Bill is gay.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something they throw in your face. It's not something that they're like.
You have to go through collectibles to actually.
You hardly even have to do that. The cutscene with the cutscene with the magazine when you're heading to Pittsburgh, and even before that,
you have to really pay attention though to see that it's male.
Talking.
I had to like pause it and actually look, because I was wondering this because my first playthrough I never picked up. I just thought they were like really close friends. Like I had to when you mentioned it to me, I had to really like stop and pay attention, and I had to read the collectibles to kind of get a better grasp that there was some sort of romantic relationship there.
And that relationship, like we don't even see it, and damn does it have some baggage.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's almost soul crushing. Like you don't really know anything about Frank.
Yeah.
And you find him hanging there, and then you read his note, and it's like, damn, there was a shit ton of resentment there. And you almost you feel like, even though Bill is like a giant asswipe, you feel so sorry for him, and he's even like, when he reads that note, he is devastated.
Yeah.
And pissed, and just so ready to get you the fuck out of his town.
Yeah, I actually, when I replayed this, I forgot that Bill was gay. And maybe I just didn't notice it because, like you said, it's very, like, you got to pay attention, like Jason said. And when I saw Ellie looking at the men's magazine, I was like, Ellie, aren't you gay? Like, come on, what are you doing, little girl? Like, stop it.
She just wants to see what all the fuss is about.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. And then at the end, when they're in the car rolling away from Bill's town because he decides to stay in town, he never wanted to leave, which I think was part of his partner's problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And he said that was like the whole time he's referring to Frank as his partner. So you think partner, like kind of like how Joel and Tess are, like just someone that you're surviving with. And then kind of from the letters and from the end scene when Ellie and Joel are driving away with the magazine, and she's like, "Oh, are these cum stains in this magazine that she took from his house?
Why are these
sticking
together?
Like, oh
these
God,
pages sticking together, yeah."
Yeah. That was so good.
Yeah, so...
And he's like batshit crazy, and I love that. Like, I feel like that's the most realistic, like, attitude that people would have in that situation.
He's a very Sam Raimi, though, type of, character where he's just got a machete. He's just going batshit crazy with a machete and a shotgun against all these zombies. It's very much like he did the TV show. Can't think of it off the top of my head.
Okay.
But people who know Sam Raimi will know what I'm talking about. Ash vs. the Evil Dead. He's very much like
okay.
one of those very very corny, very cheesy type of characters.
Yeah,
But he's also got depth to him.
he's
Yeah.
got like some of the most memorable lines in my opinion. He's just so
The fuck out of my town. Yeah.
yeah. Like, oh, I what's my favorite line from Bill? Oh, when he's talking about how like getting over to the school to get the battery was too dangerous. He's just like, fuck it, Joel needs car. Like I love that line because his attitude behind it, his performance behind it, is just so like.
And he's talking to himself half the time.
Yeah, he's talking to himself. Yeah, he's batshit crazy, and the whole time you're going to meet up with him, like Joel's trying to warn Ellie, like let me do the talking. He's a character. He doesn't take kindly to strangers. Just let me do let me do the talking. And
I
then
wonder if he was like that before the apocalypse, though.
if he wasn't, it only got way worse.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the most, I don't want to say lighthearted because he does have a sad story behind him, but he's definitely one of like the highest points of levity in the game.
I could see that, yeah.
Even though it is a very serious situation and there's lots of stress and anxiety that goes in with Bill's town with what your goal, your mission is, the comic relief that his shitty attitude provides is unmatched in the game as far as I'm concerned, and especially his banter with Ellie, him and the relationship him and Ellie formed during that time where they're just like
they're antagonistic. And that's why I said in the beginning this game is so well paced. It's very episodic. I mean, aside from the fact that it's cut into segments, so like there's summer, fall, or winter, so forth. But the game, it starts out with you in Boston, ends with Tess dying, ends on that tragic note. It's kind of the inciting incident. Joel's like, okay, I'll take you to the Fireflies. And from there, you start with Bill, like I said, a lot of levity, but also some sadness. And as you go from there with each subsequent episode, if you want to call it that, each new area you go to, it gets slowly darker and darker and darker. Well, not slowly. It gets in a pretty good pace, darker, darker, darker. And, we'll get to those other characters. But
Yeah.
I mean, let's double back and go back to let's talk about Sam and Henry because I wanted to talk about Bill while I had that.
It makes sense
jumping off point
from a chronological perspective.
Yeah, it does. But yeah, Sam and Henry, two of the more probably actually two of the most tragic deaths in this.
Yeah.
This
was
the
saddest death. Yeah, it's second. Even sadder than like Joel losing Sarah.
Yeah,
I think.
Especially because like it's prefaced by like a high point. Like it's like, hey, we did that shit. We got through. You go through this awesome segment, that sniper segment. And
then you get
just
totally
one of my
blindsided.
favorites. Yeah.
Sorry,
and then,
didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you said exactly what I was gonna say. It just comes out of nowhere and completely undercuts, or in our modern day parlance, subverts your expectations. Delaila.
No, they're just super chill brothers, really cool, down to earth, survivors. Sam was Ellie's age, she finally had someone, well, not finally, but like she had someone again that was her age. But at this point in the game, you think it's her first friend because you don't really know about Riley as much. And they love each other. And yeah, basically Sam unexpectedly gets bit. You don't know it until you're at the house chilling and you're having a conversation with Sam and you give him his Gundam and he's all like talking about the world and being all philosophical, like, oh, what are you afraid of, Ellie? And she's like, nothing. Okay, I guess being alone. And then he was like, well, I'm afraid of those fuckers out there talking about the infected. And she's like, no, I'm not, like basically he gets really philosophical. Like, do you think that the person that gets infected is still inside of there, and things
Yeah.
like that, and kind of the things that like I think any kid especially would go through if they found out they were infected. She gives them the Gundam. They wake up. Henry's making some gumbo or whatever, like banging ass food that was, and they look really good. Ellie wakes up. She's like, "Oh, that smells good. I want to eat it." And
Probably
things are all
spam.
like, right? Things are all like
I
lighthearted
thought it
and
was just a can of beans, but all right.
maybe I don't know some kind of soup.
PlayStation 3 texture. That's what
Yeah.
they were eating.
Mmm.
You see the steam coming out of it. And then yeah, so Ellie goes to wake Sam up, and he's infected, and she's yelling, and he gets on top of her, as he's infected, trying to bite her, and Joel goes to kill him because he realizes that he has to go down. He's infected. He's gonna kill Ellie or bite Ellie or whatever. And Henry shoots Joel like, no, don't fucking do that. Like, that's my brother. Like, stop. And then essentially Henry like comes to his senses, kills his brother, and then he couldn't deal with that, so he fucking killed himself.
And I think that's what made it such a powerful moment. It's what made it probably the most tragic death of the entire game, was just how fast it all happened.
Mhm.
Like
Yep.
that's a really long cutscene. I think it's like around 8 minutes long.
Mhm.
And the whole first like 5 or 6 minutes, maybe even more than that, the vast
Yeah, it's only
majority of
like
that
a minute.
cutscene, the vast majority of that entire cutscene is them in a respite, them resting, Ellie talking to Sam, and within that final, like, let's call it 2 minutes, you see that Sam has a bite. They wake up. He attacks Ellie. Henry kills him, and then he kills himself, and then cut the black. It all
Yep.
happens so quickly, and it's so much shit that you just have to sit there and process, and it doesn't pull any punches or take any breaks. You just this is the shit that just happened, and you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like it's what makes it such a powerful moment in the game. It's what makes it stick out in my memory so much years later.
It's also a realistic way for something like that to play out, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it also has, I think, ramifications for both Joel and Ellie's growth.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Especially Joel.
when we see the cut to fall and they're approaching Tommy's dam. I'm sure Delilah saw this. I don't know if you did, Jason, but there is
The grave.
the grave, and there's an optional conversation where Ellie wants to talk about it, and Joel, his character is very swallow your feelings, like,
Hmm.
I'm a man in this world, and I have to deal with things like a man.
But you can see he's starting to kind of break a little bit.
Yeah, and he doesn't, and he tells her we've already been through this, and she says okay, and they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it
On
did.
that note, I just want to say one thing, and you guys, or anybody who's been listening to the show knows I'm not a collectibles guy. I hate when a story is told through collectibles. But I think the reason I make an exception for this game, and I actually look for them and look for things like that, like the little grave off the beaten path, is because the characters in game actually react to it, and there's like optional dialogue, and it's not like you just have to pick something up and read it for lore.
Yeah.
It's like you can pick something up, like a final note by a dead family member or something, talking about how their family died, and Joel will comment on it, and Ellie will react to his comments, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a level of detail.
I think something this game does really well, that's facilitated through its collectibles and makes it worth seeking them out, is the environmental storytelling that it does. The best example is the sewers that you go through after escaping
Yes.
Pittsburgh, and
Yes.
reading the notes about that
boatman?
colony. Yeah, the boatman ish.
The final stand, yeah.
Fun thing that I kind of echo. Like, I remember in 2013 when there were discussions about DLC, a DLC that everyone was hoping for, was one about Ish. Everyone
Yeah.
wanted to play that scenario out and see how it went down. Not that I think it's necessary. It just would have been really cool because we read these notes and we get this. We paint this picture in our heads, and it's vague. Like there's a lot open to interpretation because there's only maybe 5 notes that kind of explain, and it's a very very it's not a very detailed story. It's just this man washed ashore in his boat, and he goes and hides in the sewers. He traded supplies with a family, and decided, well, I'm living in here all by myself. Maybe I should open this up to them. And it grows into this big colony where they have children, and Ish and this guy
School.
Danny, yeah, they're the protectors of it, and it becomes this bustling community, and it all turns to fail when someone accidentally left a door open and the infected got in, and we see the downfall of it through like the bodies and the shit that's just sitting everywhere, the destruction, the dead guy Kyle who had himself cornered with the children in the one room, and
But
yeah,
hey, they left a useless sawed-off shotgun for you.
Hey.
That like can't kill anything.
what are you talking about? You don't like the shorty?
Yeah, no, it's so ineffective when it's not upgraded.
I think that
and they like force you to use it in that section because that's all they'll give you ammo for.
I think in that section is the only time it's particularly useful. I didn't use it much after that area.
I never used it.
But yeah, like the environmental storytelling in this game is very good because there's lots of additional stories you can read about and piece together by going and looking for these notes or having conversations about things you see in the environment if you go looking for that stuff. Like even walking around Pittsburgh and just going through the quarantine zone and like looking at some of the things at the checkpoints, like the things
The
written
writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even the hunters, like you think when you first arrive at Pittsburgh and they attack you and they're trying to kill you and Ellie, you think that they're bad guys, but then you read the notes and the writing on the wall and you see like the military deprived them of fucking food. Like anyone would go savage if they're hungry, you know? And
Yeah.
I feel like this game does the best when it comes to that environmental storytelling. And like for Jason to read the collectibles, let's be real. How many podcasts have we had where he's like, fuck that. Like, I shouldn't have to read that. But this time, like you wanted to, and it didn't take away from the story whether you read them or not.
Well,
it just added to the world, you know.
It's not even so much that interests me. It was the characters' reactions, because the characters' reactions very much change over time to these stories. Which I found interesting.
As you discover things in the world, so do the characters, and
right.
In lieu of you may not necessarily have someone there to talk to about it. Like the characters talk to each other about it, and it kind of fills that void and becomes an interesting conversation to hear. No, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Yeah, we've been going on tangents all over the place. I mean, I threw on here Tommy and Maria. I don't necessarily think that they're that interesting.
They're just there.
Yeah,
it's just there to like bring up Joel's past. It's kind of like
not necessarily completely that, because we did find that Tommy and Maria they have this community in Jackson County that is growing. They have electricity. They're well protected. They're well armed, and it's ultimately where you wind up going at the very end of the game.
Right,
overlooking Jackson is where they have that final conversation.
It's basically to give or to tempt Joel to kind of abandon the quest and abandon Ellie, and to give that kind of midpoint drama where Joel kind of reaffirms his relationship with Ellie.
Yeah. And also because Tommy used to be a Firefly, like he now has a wife and was just like, I'm not about like that life anymore. Like I'm just here to settle down. And
I'm not about that terrorist life anymore.
I'm not about the terrorist life. He just wanted to settle down with his wife and just like hold down the fort, and that was it. But yeah, not much to say. Although I think he might. I think that settlement might be crucial for The Last of Us 2.
Considering.
Whoa! No trailers.
I didn't talk about trailers.
I will say that considering the
Speculation.
end of the game, again, the end of the game, they have that final conversation overlooking that town. They were going.
Yeah.
We know that they were going back to that town.
It would be weird if in the next game it plays no role.
I will concede that is presumably going to be in the next game.
It would be weird if it would be like in the next game. It's like, what happened to Tommy? Who? What?
All right, but that's all. But we'll leave it at that. I did like when they come back from the ranch and getting Ellie, and you know, I always thought Joel's change of mind about passing Ellie off to somebody else, to Tommy, to be taken to the Fireflies. I always thought it was kind of abrupt and didn't really have it didn't really completely make sense, but kind of watching that
the same criticism.
Kind of watching that scene again, I guess the implication is that long ride, like he had a lot of time to think and he realized like he doesn't want to put his brother in danger. If he did, he knows that Maria would be on a shit list, and he even says that to his brother and kind of uses that as an excuse, like your wife kind of scares me. But I think that was his main excuse. Where in actuality, he had that long horse ride back to the town to think and realize, like, no, I should see this through to the end.
Also, the conversation between him and Ellie. Ellie was like, you know, all my life I feel like everyone that I get to know just dies.
Yeah.
And you're the first time that I feel like this isn't happening.
Yeah.
And I think that really stuck with him and ultimately
it's an important crossroad for both their arcs, because also
Yeah.
keep in mind he was just shown that picture of his actual daughter
Mhm.
by Tommy, which I think gets him a little overly emotional. And Joel straight up says to Ellie at one point, "You're right, you're not my daughter."
And I sure as hell ain't your dad.
And
Yep.
I think I do agree with you. It's a little fast. Maybe they should have lengthened the segment a bit out and maybe given something more.
Now that Delilah also brought up that what Ellie says to Joel, and I have to imagine that yes, that must have had some profound effect on him to help aid in that quick change of mind. I have to agree. Like I said, I playing through it again made me think about that sequence a little differently, and it makes a little more sense to me now. At the way back when in 2013 when I played this, I kind of was like, that happened really fast. That doesn't really make sense. Now I feel like it makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
Something I stupidly didn't put in the notes, and I really think we should talk about it, is the opening of this game.
Oh God.
Yeah, because
how did we not even mention that? Yeah,
I just
this is what we get for starting at the end. The end is the beginning of it. It's like that Smashing Pumpkins
well,
song.
no, because generally I feel like the beginning of a lot of the games that we've played, I feel like they haven't been. It's not that they're not noteworthy.
They're not climactic.
Yeah, they're not necessarily climactic, and this is the game where someone I know that's like not that into games, I'm like, oh, hold on, I've got something for you.
Yeah.
And I have them play the first 20 minutes of this game, and they're like,
why
would you make me do that? Like that was so sad. And I'm like, yeah, but you're hooked now, aren't you? Like, yeah. Like, yeah, there you
And
go.
before we even get into what happens, like, just kudos to the design on that, because not much actual gameplay is going on, but they do such a good job of using the environment to guide you on where you're supposed to actually be moving.
Yeah.
Just to keep that really fast pace going.
Yeah.
Especially once you're on foot.
Yeah, and in so little time, like, you grow to like Sarah. She's funny. She's obviously Joel's daughter, so of course she has a good relationship with him, but it establishes Joel both as a character and as a father. And we grow to like this girl really, really fast. And it also helps that they have us play as her briefly, going through the house trying to find Joel. And that storytelling is really is well done as well, because you're going through the house looking for Joel. And like seeing, like, you go into his room and you see the broadcast on the TV and it cuts to static, and then you see a big explosion out the window and you're like, what is
Right.
going on? Go
Yeah.
downstairs. Tommy's trying to call Joel off the hook, and he's like, he just texts, he's like, I'm on my way. And then you find Joel, and everything unravels from there. But
It also gets some good establishing of character in there. So like when you're on the road with Tommy and you pass that family, Tommy's first instinct is to slow down. It's like, we need to help them, and Joel's like, fuck it, no, zoom on.
yeah,
Yeah.
you start to get a feel for Joel's character, and this goes back to your whole morality thing of not everything's black and white, and especially not in a world like this where Joel, he just wants to look out for his own. His
Yeah.
own is Tommy and and Sarah, and he doesn't know, like, what if those people are infected too. He doesn't want to put his people in danger. Which, agree or disagree, like, that's who he is as a character. So
I think a lot of people in these kinds of settings, it takes a while for them to kind of build that understanding. Like, no, you have to look out for your own because there's a lot of bad out there, and you can put your people at risk. I feel like Joel, like, just fucking snapped into survival mode quicker than
Yeah.
anyone I've ever seen in this genre.
yeah, for sure.
Well, it's kind of implied a few lines both in the beginning and the end that Joel's kind of had a rough life. You see when we first see Joel coming in the door in the opening, and he's fucking going at it with Tommy about a contract, like, that he absolutely needs a job. It's implied that he's having a tough time as a single father.
Mhm.
And later on in the game, Ellie does ask about his wife, and he says something like along the lines of, like, you're pushing the boundary you don't want to go
Yeah.
past, or something like
Yeah.
that. Like, he gets abruptly really angry at Ellie.
No, he doesn't get angry. She brings her up, and he just goes, okay. And she asks too much, and he just says too much.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Or,
seem
yeah,
angry.
yeah,
It more
you're
so
right,
just
yeah.
seems. It more so just seems like. It's not angry. It's just like.
He got
I'm,
angry
I'm
about
not.
Sarah.
I'm not ready to talk
Painful,
about this yet.
yeah.
Painful, yes. Let's
Yeah.
go painful. I think that's what that was trying to convey.
I think it's just little nods here and there to establish that Joel has been suffering / surviving before there was a physical world in which he had to actually suffer and survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I by the way, I do recommend. It's about an hour and 25 minutes long, but I do recommend watching the Grounded making of documentary for The Last of Us. It was a good watch. Really dug deep into a lot of their design inspirations and the actors' involvement in these characters, and that's what I want to talk about real quick. Is just what Troy Baker was talking about. That scene where Sarah dies, and like they didn't film that immediately, and he knew that was coming, but he was dreading the day. He didn't want to have to do it because he wasn't sure how he could, like, dig into that emotion and pull that out of himself. And, like, Neil called him one day and was like, just warning you now, like, in a week it's time. And he knew exactly what that meant. And he talks about how
Rafiki, it is time.
he talks about how Neil had him do it. He had him do so many takes, and Neil and Troy was starting to get really pissed off about it because it was taxing.
Yeah.
And, like, eventually, after, like, I think he said 7 or 8 takes, like, he finally, like, he did it, and Neil said that he thinks I think we got it.
He
I think
nailed
we're good. And then I think the next day he had him do it again. And he had to do it again. And
It's so trolly.
he had to do
Wow.
it multiple times again, and he was getting so pissed off. Again, watch the documentary. It's very, very good. But whatever he had to do to nail it, kudos to him, because
Yeah.
if Sam and Henry is the most tragic death sequence in the game, like, Sarah's death is a
It's second.
close, very, very close second.
Yeah, I agree.
It's probably my favorite part of the game is the beginning. to be quite honest.
Yeah, his whimpers and cries, her dying in his arm. It's so fucking sad.
Yeah,
and
when I
so
played
well
this-
performed. Huh?
When I played in the summer of 2013, it was like 10 minutes into the game, 15 minutes, maybe 20, whatever. Very early into the game, and I just had to like pause the game and like cry. And then I went on Facebook. I was like, I just started this game and I'm already crying.
They
And
did a very. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, in subsequent playthroughs for the platinum, like Survivor Plus mode, I cried all of those playthroughs. I played this game in 2020. I've seen many Let's Plays of it, and every Let's Play, including my Let's Play this time around, I cried. Like I couldn't, like I try not to. I'm like, I've seen this. I know what's gonna happen. I'm good. And then I fucking cried. And that's just a testament to the acting.
Exactly.
A lot of that actually also not just Troy Baker, but the girl who plays Sarah. I don't know her name. But the noises she makes. The noises that she makes, the way that they animated her dying, it's almost like when you're watching that scene in Saving Private Ryan where Wade dies, the medic, and they're all just around him, and he's on the screen, and he's just because he knows he's gonna die, and he's like, "Oh, feeling my back. Oh my God, that's my liver," and he starts crying like indiscriminately, and it's just it's really fucking brutal. Like
that actress is Hannah Hayes.
Yeah.
And yes, she.
But the little squeals that she makes as
Yeah.
she's like holding her stomach, like it's a very realistic,
Yep.
visceral way of portraying it. Yeah.
And him just saying like, "Baby, don't do this to me. Baby, don't do this to me." Like that disbelief. Like, no, this can't be fucking happening right now to my daughter.
Mhm.
Oh, so good.
And to juxtapose
sad.
that to like he just shot his neighbor. He's just like fuck these other neighbors. We'll abandon them on the road. He's like Supermaning it, carrying. He's already been wounded in a car crash, but he's carrying his, daughter. He's got a busted knee, and he got shot as well when the soldier shot at them. So we got like this image of a pretty tough guy, and now he's been brought to his knees completely. It's like an amazing juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the military dude that shot her, like he didn't want to do it. So you would think like he's the bad guy for doing that, but he was like telling his superiors like, "There's a little girl here. Like, can we let them go?" And the superior demanded that they be shot, and he just fulfilled his duty because I felt like that was his way of protecting himself and his family and his own people because he's protected being in the military because they're protected. And so like all these morally gray themes, like just like understanding each character and very quickly. He didn't have to shoot them, and he did because that was his duty. But he really didn't want to because she was a kid. This is all so good.
Yeah, so it's a good thing we remember to talk about the opening. I feel stupid for not putting that in the notes. I think there's only one other character I want to talk about. And that's David.
Fuck him.
Yeah.
He's the only one that's a bad guy. There's no morally gray. That's a bad man.
So
Tell me your name.
Here's another thing. Did you guys realize that he was voiced by Nolan North?
No, I didn't know that.
I knew that just because it was mentioned in that Play, Watch, Listen podcast, but otherwise I wouldn't have known.
I believe it.
Yeah,
I believe it. It sounds like other characters he's
voiced.
Well,
that's the thing is like it. Like I've anytime I hear him in another game, like when I played through, he voices the main character of Spec Ops: The Line, and anytime when I played Spec Ops: The Line, all I could hear was Nathan Drake. I couldn't it was hard to get to a point where I could take that main character seriously because all I could hear was Nathan Drake. And the first time I played this game, I remember being blown the fuck away when the credits were rolling and I saw David Nolan North. And I'm like, wait, what? No, there's no fucking way. And like now knowing that, I can kind of hear it, but it's such an astounding difference that he was able to pull off and go from being this stupidly charismatic adventurer to biggest creep that eats
now when you go back to play Uncharted, you'll be like just thinking in your head, "Hey Sully, I wonder what her name is."
Hey Elena, everything happens for a reason. And
Oh my god, and they have a daughter.
God. Um,
God damn it.
I feel like the first time when I played through this game, because we were talking about this, when we were talking about this in the Slack channel, Delaila, you said, you kept saying, "I'm about to face the pedophile," and when I first played through the game, that's
I
definitely
didn't even pick up on that. Yeah.
well, see, that's the vibe I got when I first played the game. This time though, like, I don't know. I think he has this weird, like, infatuation with her. I don't know if it's a pedophilic
Oh
infatuation.
no, he was trying to rape her. It was
No.
very clear.
Yeah, it definitely becomes clear at the end.
Okay.
It wasn't vulgar though. I give you that. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
at first, like, he touches her hand when she's in the jail cell.
Okay, yeah.
And she knew what was happening, and so she attacks him. Like, she grabs his hand and like stabs his hand or something like that. And then at the end, after you have that boss fight, which was really annoying boss fight, but we'll get into the
Yeah.
combat later. He gets on top of her and he's like, "Oh, just like be quiet" or something like
You
that.
could try
And
begging.
then when Joel comes,
Yeah.
kills him, she's like, he tried to, and he's like, "Don't worry, baby, I'm here now. You're safe."
See
And
that?
she didn't say
Yeah.
like he tried to rape me. She was like, she tried to. And I guess as a woman, like, I pick up on that stuff a lot easier.
Yeah.
It almost reminds me of the vibes I was getting. It reminds me a lot of, and I haven't read the book in so long, but in Stephen King's It, Beverly's father, where like he does, if I remember correctly, he doesn't like outright rape her, but he has this weird like
No,
there's this weird tension where like he's always like your daddy's little girl, like that weird
the
pet
implication is
relationship.
definitely that he's
He's going to, yes.
or
at
not
one point.
more so
that he
he's
does.
that he's
He believes that she's his, like he thinks of her as like he thinks of his mother. He misses her mother.
what I'm saying is he is most, the implication is that he is most definitely sexually abusive.
I see. I don't remember. You might be right. Yeah.
I think the thing is because like those both the It and also The Last of Us, they don't show the act of it. Like they just show the suffering happening in between, like the avoidance and kind of the physical abuse, but never the sexual abuse. But it's just implied, and I appreciate that because like I don't want to fucking see someone get raped. Like I get it. Like with just
Stephen
details.
King definitely didn't shy away from having a 14-year-old orgasm orgy. But
Yeah.
anyway, back to The Last of Us. They definitely do show David like just straight up hop on her and in a burning building nonetheless.
I think that was more of a let's call it hidden insinuation, whereas the very on the surface bit was that he and his colony were a bunch of cannibals.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a note that you can find that's
the
meat
count,
ledger. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's counting like the people that they dragged in, and it's like
Yeah.
In the restaurant with all the writing.
there
on the
is
side,
like then there's the people hanging in the
steak.
yeah. It's a the game really does with its themes, like you consistently encounter something that seems more fucked up, and then it only gets worse from there.
Like I said, it just gets darker and darker.
Yeah,
It's-
like the hunters in Pittsburgh were pretty bad, because you see them gunned down, and innocent people in the streets, and they go over to them and they're like, these shoes are worn out, they got nothing, and then they just drive away.
And they have
Right.
like a woman tied up to the front of their truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you even see like some notes from those hunters of like the tourists that they found, and the hauls they got from them, like how many pairs of shoes and shit like that. And it's like incredibly fucked up. And then you get to the fucking Winter Lodge, and it's 10 times worse.
It also is
Yeah.
incredibly stupid. Wouldn't you just fucking recruit people or force them into your getting like?
No,
that's what I
because
don't like about
because
these,
then you gotta
these
when are you gonna eat?
post-apocalyptic shit. What are you gonna eat? You make them go out and forage, like, well, not forage, whatever the word is, gather for you
Well, the
by force.
I think the idea, I mean, it's a pretty common idea with cannibalism, is once you have that taste, that's what you want.
Yeah, but
And you don't
cannibalism
want
also
anything
fucks
else.
you up. Like,
Right.
it does weird things to you, yeah.
So they wouldn't recruit because they want that.
Whatever.
They want that
This,
taste
this
of
is
flesh.
like, we're bringing the real world into a video game.
Now we're talking about cannibalism.
Yeah.
Side note: we do
Yeah.
not condone cannibalism.
Yeah.
This weird thing, it discolors your skin and makes your nails yellow. It's weird.
David was about the only character that I thought was a bad person. Like, no questions asked.
He was just straight up insane, yeah.
I don't know. I also like to double back. I do feel Marlene wasn't a good person either.
Yeah, like I said, I think she was too radical and consumed by something that seems like a good idea, but there are better ways of achieving it.
Yeah. So, all right. I think we've really talked about every character in the game. The last thing I kind of want to bring, or couple more things I kind of want to bring up, just about like the world as it were. Is there really any difference? We've talked about the Fireflies. We've talked a bit about the military. We've talked about the hunters. Like, is there really any difference between the three of them?
I think so. I feel like the hunters are just fucking broken survivors. Like, they're hungry, they're getting food. They've been deprived food even when this shit started off. So I feel like they're like the downtrodden, just like revolting. I feel like the Fireflies are more revolutionary. They're like anti-military. They're just trying to find the cure for the infection and kind of against like military rule. And the military, they're just like cold-blooded. Like, I'm just gonna fucking kill you if you're here out on curfew.
Yeah, they're
Yeah, at the
trying
same
to
time,
keep everything controlled and regulated.
Yeah,
ahead.
it's interesting how in the beginning you see the military just like fucking people up, literally lining them up and shooting them. And if you walk up to them, they'll bash you in the head with the butt of their rifles, which was a cool thing that I didn't know first time I played. I just wanted to try to see what would happen if I ran up to them, but I almost came to like empathize with their situation towards the end, especially as the Fireflies, you learn more about them. Because it's like, damn, man, you're getting fucking like bombed and shit. Like, you're just trying to keep order and like keep a safe zone where people don't get infected. Like, I honestly don't see Fireflies or military being better than one another.
Okay, I guess there is a subtle difference. Maybe not subtle. There's an obvious difference between the three. Like, the military want complete control. They're trying to contain. They are trying to keep people safe by any means necessary, but they overall do want some sort of control in this uncontrollable world.
Yeah, they're not like good. They're not like virtuous, but
right. And
they have a noble aim in the same way that the Fireflies have a noble aim. They just don't use the best means to achieve it.
Right. And the Fireflies, I agree with you. The Fireflies are absolutely extremists that have a noble cause, but they don't do it. They don't achieve it through noble means. And the hunters are just the hunters that you come across are just flat out survivors.
They're the same as you. And Joel literally makes a point. There's a section when you first enter Pittsburgh. There's a guy posing as somebody who is wounded and needs help. And later on, Ellie asks Joel, "How did you know that the guy was faking it?" And Joel's like, "I've been on the other side. I've literally done what he did."
Yeah, he's been on both sides. Ellie asks him, "Does that mean you've killed a lot of innocent people?" And he just goes, "Hmm." To which he's like, "I'll take that as a yes." And he responds, "Take it however you like." He doesn't confirm. He doesn't deny it. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the combat a little bit, I guess. Actually, no, I'm sorry. There's one more thing we need to talk about as it relates to story, and that's Left Behind.
Oh yeah.
We should talk about Left Behind now. So Jason, as someone that never played it before, did you feel that it added anything?
Aside from learning, I mean, Riley was already brought up in the main
She was
story.
brought up once, and it
she was brought up once, and really her importance to Ellie's character is really summed up in that section of dialogue in the main story. So she didn't need this. Didn't what this felt like? What the entire Left Behind expansion felt like to me was a part that was originally part of the main game. Like I do actually think that this probably was in the main game, in between the part where Joel falls off the horse and the section with David. And Bruce Straley, who's the overall game director, probably said, "All right, we need to cut this because it kind of kills the pacing of the game,"
So in
which it
the
does. This is a very slow section, and ultimately, it doesn't add that much to the story, other than finding out that Ellie actually had a romantic relationship with Riley.
so to
I
quickly
feel, I feel like Neil Druckmann just really wanted it out there that Ellie was a lesbian, to be quite honest.
to quickly interject, there's also a making of for Left Behind. From that, I feel like I can pretty much say no, it was not part of the main game and cut. This was something that they decided after the fact to make.
Okay.
And
That
part
was
of
just
that
my guess.
part of that also came from there was a prequel comic series,
American Dream. Was it?
American Dream. Yeah, that goes into Ellie's time at the military preparatory school and befriending Riley.
Yeah.
And that goes up to her leaving, if I recall. It's been a while since I read it. Probably should have read it before we recorded this. That's all right. we played Left Behind, and frankly, to be completely honest, like most people that have played this game haven't necessarily even played Left Behind, so there's definitely an even lesser chance that they've read that comic.
Yeah.
But
And
what
it's
this
overall. Oh, sorry. Go on.
no, it's just what this DLC to me tries to do is it tries to contextualize who Riley is. Why was she important to Ellie? Because we get the mention of her that it was her best friend, and she was the first to go. So it tries to show how important Riley's death and how Ellie thought she was going to die alongside her, like how much that affected her. And to me, I don't know. To me, that's kind of important. Like that's really important to who she is as a person, who she is as a character in the story that we're being told.
My retort to that would just be that the most important parts of dialogue in the DLC is literally quoted by Ellie in the main game. Like the sitting around, lose our minds together.
I don't agree with that because
so like I already got all of that from the main game. I didn't need it, and it would be one thing if this was like a really fun DLC, but it's extremely slow and boring.
You didn't like the water gun fight?
No, it's just.
What about the Halloween store?
Yeah, the Halloween store was so much fun.
I did not find any of that fun. It's not fun in the same way that because there are very few actual fights in the game, in the same way that the gameplay loop in the main game is, all right, collect resources, build your way up, and then there's an encounter, and you can choose how you want to approach it based on how you've upgraded, collected resources. It doesn't play like that.
Well, it does, but they are few and far between.
Yeah, the whole time you're basically building up to that final fight, and there are really small encounters in between, like one or two.
Yeah.
I liked this DLC. It's probably one of my favorite DLCs ever. I mean, I don't play DLCs, but this one I played because obviously The Last of Us is my favorite game of all time, and so of course I'm going to play it. And I think it did add to Ellie's history a lot. I feel like had we not had that, we wouldn't have known what connection she had before Joel, and she's not like young enough to have not had any other connection with anyone else. I would like to know more about her mom, and I think they explore that a little bit in the comic book, but Riley was the only other person that Ellie loved, whether that was romantic or not. Like that was her friend, that was her companion, and I thought it was fun to like see their relationship. Like they're super cool. I would hang out with them, like with the water gun fights and in the Halloween store exchanging masks and just being silly with one another. And Ellie pulls out her pun book and she's just saying all these jokes and they're laughing with each other. And I don't know. I thought it was really cute. And I felt like essentially them kissing towards the end of the DLC, I don't think that was like Neil Druckmann just trying to establish that Ellie was gay. Because honestly, when I played this, and I think 2014 is when it came out, I didn't think that that was a demonstration of Ellie being gay. I thought that was a demonstration of Ellie loving someone. And I feel like if Riley was a guy, she probably would have kissed him just because of their bond. And yeah, I know, like that kind of changed once we saw the. Sorry. Well, I think at this point everyone knows because everyone's like,
and
oh,
everybody
pandering.
Like, and everybody knows like who Neil Druckmann is. Like he's a pretty out there dude with like his politics. Like there's going to be that, and it's already been established that like
he's very
other characters in the game.
I would say Naughty Dog as a studio is very progressive. And he in particular definitely pushes for that, and I agree with that. I think there should be more of these themes and ideas present in video games. And I think so. When I first played this, and the conversation about this DLC coming out was solely that Ellie is gay, and I'm like, why does that matter? Like, stop.
She's a kid. She doesn't know what she is.
Stop focusing on that. Like, stop focusing on the fact that she's gay and focus on that she had this bond with someone that she loves. And yeah, she's gay, and that's great. Absolutely, we should have a gay main character, a gay main or protagonist. Jeez, I can't talk. But like, that's all the conversation, and I guess it's a testament to how little that is seen in video games. That one example comes out, and that's all everyone can talk about. That's all everyone can focus on, instead of the actual point that I think they're trying to get across.
I think it's also a testament to how little is actually added to the game.
Well, no,
because there was nothing else that was really there. And just another note, the dialogue for this, there was. Unlike the dialogue for Ellie in the main game, where you can tell she's a 14-year-old kid the entire time, even if she's a bit more mature just by necessity of the situation than like 14-year-olds in our world today. Mm-hmm. Where in the main game she's constantly, she swears more than any other character in the game.
Yeah.
But the way she talks and the way the curiosity she has and the way she observes things and remarks about things, you can very much tell that there's that innocence there of a child. The way that Riley and Ellie interact and the dialogue they have, there's such a dissonance. Yes, it's almost like a 45-year-old married couple arguing. They don't sound like children. It's weird. Like,
well, I think,
and then they'll go between that and them joking around in like an arcade or the Halloween store, and it's like just this.
This was brought up before,
it takes me out of it.
This was brought up before, though, is that in a world like this, you can't really have a childhood. I think, but for them,
it doesn't even matter. Like, children just don't talk like that, like the way that they talk. It doesn't even matter. Like world that you're in, they're talking about like their relationship. Like you left me. They're getting so emotional about it, and they're talking in very what's the word I'm looking for? Well-articulated sentences in a way that Ellie doesn't even really necessarily speak in the main game.
I don't know. I didn't feel that was noticeable, jarring, or any of the sort, but...
Me either. I do think Riley was extra mature, more so than Ellie, and I think that's why you saw that dynamic a little bit. I feel like Riley, from what she said about her experiences with Marlene and the Fireflies, I think she's been through some fucking shit that we don't even see in this DLC that makes her more mature than Ellie, and being Ellie's best friend, and I think that brought out a level of maturity in Ellie as well, besides being a kid in this pandemic. But I do like see what you're saying, Jason. Like, it was extra mature. I feel like even people like in their 40s can't have that like articulate of a conversation when it comes to like relationship building and stuff like that. But yeah, like you said, Mark, it wasn't an issue. It wasn't anything that bothered me. I just interpreted it as like they really cared about each other. They were all each other had, and essentially they um they were really good at discussing their emotions, but I think that's just because they were forced to grow up. I think
Right.
that's what the point I'm trying to make.
And I think that is
I understand
something
your
that
guys'
we
arguments.
I think that's something we argued in the main game as well. Is that they did all I mean, I would say even the same of Sam. His brother wouldn't let him be a child. Like it's even to a bigger extreme there.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't even let him have a little Gundam toy.
Yeah.
Like he was forcing Sam, Henry was forcing Sam to be 10, 15 years older than he actually was.
To be fair, he was trying to teach him a moral lesson. We only steal what we need.
Sure, but
I know what you're saying. I get your
right,
point is well taken.
That's his explanation on the surface, but it really is like, no, you need to make yourself prepared for what's to come. You need to be ready to live in this world because this is the world we live in.
Yeah.
Like that is a big theme. A lot of this game is a coming of age story.
I get it, but it's just the dissonance for me just comes between the way Ellie behaves, especially early on, especially in the first half of the main game. It's just there's a dissonance there where it almost feels like the Ellie at the end, the Ellie that we see in the DLC feels like the Ellie at the end of the main game. Because there is a difference between Ellie at the beginning of the main game and Ellie at the end. I guess my overall summary of how I felt about the DLC is that when Ellie tells Joel about, Riley's line that, we have the option, let's just sit here and lose our minds together. It was far more powerful just imagining that and the mystery of it. I didn't need to see it.
That's
And
totally fine.
I got everything that was important about it from Ellie, just the way her inflection of her voice when she was telling Joel that story.
I still do feel that there's a valid point for this to exist and for this to be something for us to play and experience. I won't disagree with you that maybe the mystery of it was all we needed.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that this was a bad addition to the story. I think
it's the same way that, like, going back to we were talking about Bill. Like, Bill didn't go like, "Hey Joel, I was really in love with this guy," and then like, no, we understand from subtle hints and
no, but again,
that they really cared about this person.
There's a huge difference there, though. There's a huge difference there because there weren't really that many hints between Ellie and Riley in terms of their relationship, and this did help to establish that friendship, that relationship, those feelings the two of them had together. That is nothing we would have gathered outside of this DLC. There's no way we would have gotten.
It doesn't really matter, just whether they were platonic or they were in love. It doesn't really matter to the stakes and how she felt about it.
While I agree,
at the end of the day,
while I agree, it does help to add to her character development, or not necessarily character development, but add to her character, her background, who she is as a person. This does add to that.
Yeah, and it also adds to just like you can tell they were trying to be kids in this world. Like they were trying really hard, and every time that they tried to have fun, it was always like, no, I got to go back. I gotta go back to the the military or the Fireflies or whatever. Like they were constantly trying to have a good time, and they were the only two people that they can do that with. Ellie couldn't be a kid with anyone else but Riley, and that's why that relationship was so strong.
And to be fair, maybe I would have had a better time with the DLC, and maybe one of the things that caused me, because I felt like it was so poorly paced and boring, maybe if there was more like satisfying gameplay bits with it, because there's a lot more of those slow story beats than there is actual gameplay.
I won't disagree with that. That it is for as
it's not like the main game where there's a lot of gameplay and then
for as well paced as the main game is, the DL or Left Behind isn't nearly as well paced, and it is very much because its primary goal isn't to facilitate anything for the player to accomplish or do. It's to give you that background. It is to give you that story. And what we got
And
in terms of gameplay was good. There just wasn't a lot of it. Go ahead, Delilah.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, I just wanted to, because I don't want to talk about the DLC for too long, but just a quick note about like her kissing Riley. I felt like this whole game we established like this is Ellie. This is who Ellie is. Ellie wasn't defined by being gay. Ellie wasn't defined by anything. She was just Ellie. And I feel like had we known that going into the game, it would have been a little more off-putting. Not even off-putting. Like I probably wouldn't have cared. But like I think what Naughty Dog does well is like these are the characters. Oh, and this is some elements to them. Like who gives a shit? Like her being gay, like you said, Jason, it doesn't matter. We still like Ellie. She's still a badass.
Yeah.
She's still
Because
somebody we care about.
It's not even just Riley. Like her attachment issues, it comes even before that. It's hinted at her mother, Marlene, throwing her off on these two smugglers, Tess dying. Like it's a
Yeah.
long running thing. Like it's not just Riley. So
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think we've said enough about the DLC. I think we can safely move on from it.
Yeah.
There isn't too much more I want to talk about. I just kind of want to hit on some other additional points. The combat, let's call it the general gameplay loop of sneaking around and how the combat works. I didn't realize
sneaking around until the game makes you not sneak around.
Yeah.
Because I picked up this time around because I had heard people talk about it, and I wanted to see if this was true. The game. So whatever weapons you have, the game will be like, okay, the way the levels are designed, the way the enemies are spread out, it will give you the option of using stealth,
Yeah.
but it very much will force you to get into a desperate situation where you have to pull out your gun. And while ammo will definitely be scarce, at least until the end of the game will automatically drop ammo from one of the enemies or even present it in some area for whatever weapons that you are currently carrying if you run out of ammo. The game never lets you run out of ammo.
Yeah, that was an issue on normal mode.
Yeah.
And this
I was
is,
playing on normal
said,
mode.
yeah,
I always judge based on normal mode.
yeah, of course. And I played on normal mode this time too, but I remember in 2013 when I played Survivor, I was like, this is how the game's supposed to be played.
Yes. Absolutely. This game is meant to be played on Survivor, the hardest difficulty at the time. You get scarce resources. You really have to think about what you use and why you're using scarce. Sorry. you really have to plan ahead. And I'm playing through right now. After the fact, they added a difficulty called Grounded, which is a little harder than Survivor, and it removes your HUD.
Oh.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough, but again, like this is how you should be playing this game because
the stealth is definitely more satisfying. Yeah. Especially when you get into the more brutal elements and takedowns.
I didn't realize this was such a popular opinion that like people don't like how this game plays. And I've always thought that like that's ludicrous. I think this game plays amazingly. They're like, no, it feels like shit to play, and I'm like, how? And like playing through it again, like I kind of see where they're coming from, but I still love it. I still think it tends
to be the kind of people who prefer like the smoothness of something like the more recent Doom or games of that kin.
I think it's less
or like platinum games, action games, things that flow and are totally gameplay centric.
I think it's less that and more. I like. In situations like this, in games like this, I like the anxiety. I want to feel the anxiety.
It's thematic. The gameplay is designed to be thematic, especially in its brutality. And like I said, the encounters are designed so that eventually you will be forced to either just flat out run. Like there's that one situation where you're trapped and you got to pull a generator to open a door somewhere else in the level. And then when you pull the generator, a bunch of bloaters come out. Yeah. Now, originally, I thought I had to defeat those bloaters. I didn't realize until this playthrough, you can just fucking run. and not deal with any of them and
Yeah,
just
Right.
open the door.
there's a lot of situations where you don't have to engage in combat at all. You can actually sneak through most of Pittsburgh and not have to deal with most of the encounters, which is what
Right.
I did on Grounded, or have been doing on Grounded. I'm still in Pittsburgh on Grounded, but like the fight in the bookstore, I snuck through that whole thing and didn't deal with. They caught me right as I was at the exit, and I just booked it, and I didn't have to
I
do
will
that
say
entire
the
fight.
AI can be funky in this game.
Yes, yes, it can. It is
Like you'll get spotted out of nowhere. Like you won't even be moving. You'll be behind cover, and like all of a sudden a dude will turn around and be like, "What? What's that?" And they'll all
Yeah.
start shooting at you. Like,
It's like they know where you are, even if you're hiding.
I think
Yeah,
what's
and you're
even
not
more what's even more frustrating in that regard is clickers are supposed to be blind,
and they can see you.
but
Yeah,
but when they not they can't see you, but when they do hear you, they like lock on, and it does not matter how quiet you are, wherever you hide,
Right.
they do always like make their way over to you and find
and you can't
again.
throw a bottle to distract them or anything. Yeah,
Yeah, and even
Ye-
sometimes like the good the best strategy I found with dealing with them as Ellie is to throw a bottle or brick at them and then come up and stab them with the knife, and sometimes
Yeah.
even that doesn't work,
hmm
which is a little frustrating. But
it's definitely weird. The range of melee is so weird. Sometimes it's far, like really far. Sometimes you have to get really close, and all of a sudden it will disappear. And sometimes like it will be up like the triangle button to knife or shiv somebody, and you'll hit it, and then instead of you meleeing them, all of a sudden they turn around and start shooting you, or a clicker will just eat you. Like
Yeah.
there are just glitches like that. Um,
I think people that criticize this gameplay are forgetting that this is a survival horror game.
Yes.
This isn't a third-person action game, and if the gun controls was silky smooth, like you said, Doom, or like Gears of War, it wouldn't give you that level of anxiety that like Mark and me, and I'm sure you, Jason, too, are looking
Yeah.
for. It would just you wouldn't have that dread. It wouldn't feel like a
very
horror
much
game.
like Resident Evil 2,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
the remake of Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, like
I
that
think
slow like gun aiming.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I think
And-
another problem people have though is also the puzzles. Like the puzzles aren't necessarily as fun as like something
No,
in like
they
say a
are-
Resident Evil game.
they're not.
That's
Naughty Dog has the Uncharted franchise in their pocket, and the best that they could come up with puzzles for this is go find a dumpster and wheel it over here so you can climb up to
Yeah.
this ledge.
You can't
that
really
is
call
my
them
biggest-
puzzles.
Yeah.
That's my biggest criticism of the gameplay, especially in the beginning of the game. It was like, oh my god, do I have to get another fucking plank? Do I have to get
Yeah.
another
Right.
ladder? Like,
The
is this all
planks
we're
that-
doing?
What's even worse is the fucking pallets.
Yeah.
To move Ellie through water. It's just it does slow everything down to a screeching halt, and they're
I'd
not.
like to see how much time it takes up, like overall throughout the game, how much time is taken up just by that shit.
Yeah, like
It'd be
an hour.
interesting to
like
see.
2
Yeah.
hours.
And it's funny because I know I've brought it up in a past episode. I think for our Final Fantasy VII. I don't mind the moments where things slow down and you have to you go slowly through a section to take in the environment, take a breather, and go through
But
that.
you need character stuff to fill it up.
Well, you get that in this game, but
You do
most of
sometimes.
the time their way of slowing things down is you got to go find this ladder and then climb up here, and then you got to use a plank, and you might have to use it in a couple different places, so you have to pick it back up, and that it's not hard. It's not hard to figure those out. They
Yeah.
are really, really easy. I'd hesitate to even call them puzzles. And I bring
Yeah.
up Uncharted because there have been some really clever puzzles in Uncharted games that Naughty Dog has Naughty Dog has made.
There was that
developed.
massive room in 2, like forget it was the one with the circular thing in the middle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah.
There are. It's not like they haven't made cool, compelling, and even somewhat thought-provoking puzzles. This game just they didn't have any of them.
Yeah.
which is,
No.
to say the least, disappointing.
Solve one, you solve them all.
Right.
Yeah, that's my biggest critique. Actually, probably my only critique of this game.
How about the progress? I know I bitched about it. I'm bringing up all the old episodes now. I bitched about this in our Plague Tale Innocence episode, but I feel like this might be the game that really like started pushing crafting into like maybe not the game. I feel like this might be a game that popularized that as like a thing that every other fucking third person over the shoulder narrative driven experience.
It's a very Resident Evil thing.
I wouldn't even say Resident Evil because like it makes a lot of sense in that context, and it's a lot different. In this game,
what, mixing flowers to mixing them herbs
first of all,
to make some
they're herbs, Jason.
dem herbs.
But like the crafting system in this game was good.
Yeah.
I liked it.
So did I.
Like it a hell of a lot more on the harder difficulties where you're scrounging for shit and you barely may have enough to make like one health kit or one Molotov, and you have to figure out which one.
It's amazing how much like fucking gunpowder there is in this world, but there's no scissors.
Yeah, there's no scissors.
Again, Jason.
Scissors is definitely like the most restrictive thing.
Again, Jason, play on Survivor and there's fucking nothing.
Yeah. And then you want to save your shivs for the doors that have more crafting materials.
Right.
And for the trophy.
Yeah.
Can you even for the I literally opened like every safe and got all the shit. You can't even fully, I mean, you can choose to put like upgrade materials to fully upgrading like one weapon should you choose. But in terms of like those pills,
you have to
can't even
play another playthrough.
You have to do New Game Plus, right?
Yeah, you can't fully upgrade all weapons or fully upgrade Joel in a single playthrough. You have to do New Game Plus. Could be a bad thing.
I think that's a great thing actually in terms of making your decisions matter.
Yeah, I you know what, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, okay. The last thing I kind of just want to bring up before the final question, I don't want to spend much time on this. The multiplayer is really good.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's like,
I mean, I didn't play it now, but in 2013.
I dabbled in it in 2013. I honestly don't really remember, so I'll just take your guys' word for it.
It's basically just like it's the gameplay.
Is it like Uncharted's?
No, well, no, it's like The Last of Us. It's 2 teams of 4, and it plays exactly like The Last of Us. You gather resources and you go against the other team, and there's a couple different game modes, lots of different maps, and
like, fighting over sugar.
There's
you
this
capture the sugar.
Well, it's kind of because there's this meta game where you're actually in charge of a colony. And
like Oregon Trail.
Yeah, depending on how well you do in matches determines how many resources you get, and that determines like if you keep all your people in your colony healthy. If you don't get enough resources because you did poorly in a match, like they start to get sick, they start to die off, and you gotta when you go out in these multiplayer matches, you are actively doing it to keep your people alive, because you are, and certain dynamic events will show up. I say dynamic even though they're completely scripted. In
like the, infected will come out and shit.
Yeah, like it'll be like, you're hit with like a really bad disease or something. If you have to do a certain challenge to a certain point. And less of your population will die off by the end of the 3rd day or whatever. There's ones that threaten to kill all of your people unless you perform like well enough.
Which was kind of a nightmare as a trophy hunter.
Yes,
I got lucky. Like at the skin of my teeth, I had to get like a certain amount of kills, or else I would lose 100% of my population. And in the last 30 seconds of the match, I got the kill, and I was like, "Oh, thank God!" Because like we had been like deep into like the hunter, whatever it's called, because there's like a hunter faction, and
there's you can do the hunter journey and the firefly journey.
The firefly journey, yeah.
This sounds like a a multiplayer experience that would do exceptionally well on PC, but on consoles would die really fast.
I
In
was
terms of like player population.
So I was playing it last year before the server shut down on PS3, and it still had a bustling community.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't have expected that.
What I like about it though is like you sneak around and you don't show up on the mini map for your enemies until you like run. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
I guess that's not really like a huge point, but
it was.
it made it unique. I think.
Yeah, it was a really refreshing take on like tacked on multiplayer, quote unquote. It's like Uncharted 2 when Uncharted 2 decided to add multiplayer. No one expected it to be this good.
Yeah.
And now The Last of Us Part 2, we know it's not going to ship with a multiplayer mode, and people are actually upset about that because this multiplayer like is that good that people would want it to be included.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't wanna leave it out. I think I was playing it a little bit recently, and they're on PS4 because that's the only one that's live anymore. The PS3 version shut down last year, but like it still has a community of people playing it. I do recommend it. I recommend playing it if you haven't given it a shot. It's fun. As fun as that gameplay can be. Did you guys have any other things you wanted to talk about before I go into the final question?
Just one
Nope.
thing I want to say is that like I was really scared to play this game again because I was afraid that playing it in 2020 I was going to be more critical of it. And I was in a way in terms of like the puzzles that we talked about, but I thought that it was going to skew my idea of this being my favorite game of all time, and it only reinforced it.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think I understand why you were scared about that, but I also think that being more critical of something with a more critical or going through something that you love with a more critical mind is a good thing. That was me years ago with Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII, favorite game of all time. I played through it again a couple years ago, and I came out of it like, wow, this thing has a shit ton of flaws.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop me from loving that game. That doesn't end the countless amount of memories that I have playing that game, you know.
Feels so good to hear you say that.
Why?
That Final Fantasy VII has flaws. I've been telling you.
I've told you that for years.
Well, the thing is, The Last of Us to me didn't have flaws. Like it was just the puzzles, and that was the only flaw that stuck out to me this time. So to play in 2020 and still feel like it's like, of course, the graphics aren't as good, but to feel like it's not really flawed is insane.
Yeah, I will say that a lot of those cutscenes, the graphics, even on the remastered version, they don't quite hold up.
And some of the textures as well.
But it's a product of its time. At the time, like
it was next gen graphics at the time.
At this point, the game is a few years short of a decade old. Like
yeah, it was the Swan Song on the PS3, and at that time, it was the best looking game I'd ever played.
Yeah,
right.
And it happens every generation. You get to the end of a console gen, you're like, games can't look better than this, and then next system comes out with games that look way better than that, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Well, I think next gen it's not going to be so much textures, more frame rate and shit like that, and lighting.
But a conversation for another time. Okay, so I'll just say
I'll just say that I had the same I didn't hold the game in quite as high regard as Delaila going in, but I was pleasantly surprised to find that I didn't look down on it that much less, I should say. Like my score that I would have given it didn't really come down that much.
Yeah.
Came down a tiny bit.
But... We'll get to that, but real quick, final question coming at you live. The Last of Us Part 2 is right around the corner. What are we looking forward to seeing most? Whether it be an improvement to how the game plays. I'll open it up a little bit from what we've seen of the footage. Just don't spoil anything for the story, but like what are you guys looking forward to most with the sequel?
I think story-wise, just to see Ellie's reaction when there's no way that she can't know that Joel was lying to her, and Joel knows that, and kind of how that conversation plays out. But in terms of gameplay, and this is only after hearing like impressions from people who have their hands on it, is that it's a lot. It's trying to outdo Metal Gear Solid, and that's insane to me because Metal Gear Solid has like some of the best stealth mechanics ever for that genre.
I don't see.
It's hard for me to believe too, but
I don't see
for
Naughty
someone like
Dog
Greg
outdoing
Miller,
5.
who's like obsessed with the Metal Gear series, to say something like that,
Uh,
I want to see even where that's coming from, even if it's not exactly like Metal Gear or like to that caliber, like just to see like why that comparison's coming up. I'm very excited to see that.
I'm looking forward to, hopefully, because I personally believed from the get-go that The Last of Us should have just remained a standalone story. It was fine the way it was. Not just fine, it was well constructed, well crafted, well paced. Should have just ended there. I didn't want a sequel. And I don't think it should have had a sequel, but now that it's getting a sequel, I just hope that this sequel has a purpose, and I really hope it like just ends with this sequel. I mean, I know it won't, because it's pretty clear that Neil Druckmann wants to make this like his franchise. He's trying to get like an HBO show going off it. He has one foot in gaming and one foot in Hollywood, which is the same thing that happened in the comics industry, and the comics industry died because of it, because writers kind of just use comics as a leaping off point to get into Hollywood. And that plays into other shit with inside politics with Amy Hennig and inner workings at Naughty Dog. We won't get into that. I just hope that like this story has a purpose in the same way that the first one did, and that, you know, hopefully it just ends here. We don't see like a Last of Us franchise and we got like Last of Us 3, Last of Us 4, Last of Us 5. I'm not looking forward to that. I think what made The Last of Us special was that it was a succinct, well-told story. Boom. Well-paced. The gameplay was relevant to it, and it had thematic meaning to what was going on in that story, and the characters were well-crafted, and that's it.
Yeah, they could have gone without a sequel for sure.
Yeah, sorry, I was rambling a bit there, but I was getting a bit emotional.
I agree. I didn't expect a sequel. I didn't really want a sequel. I'm looking forward to this sequel selling me on itself.
Yeah.
I look forward to being sold on the concept, the reason for its existence. I've already been mostly sold on what we've seen so far, I will say, but I'm not like some of the gameplay has definitely been impressive, but I just don't want The Last of Us to become The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll let that happen. just to put it out there. But okay. I always say that's the final question, but really, I guess my actual final question
Your final question?
My final question. Jason, what's the Kwasnicki rating on this bad boy?
So, I originally would have given it a 9.
Ooh.
And I think I'm going to give it an 8.7 final rating.
8.7,
which
is like the highest score you've ever given.
Which is, that's extremely high.
8.7 what?
Oh, I didn't even think.
He always forgets.
8.7 pairs of scissors. Which you can't even hold in the game, that many pairs of scissors. You know, you can't even strap on that many pairs of scissors to your machete or your tomahawk. But
okay, all right, that about wraps up this episode then. Thank you for listening. Delaila, what you got going on?
I have a full playthrough of The Last of Us in preparation for the Spoilercast and The Last of Us 2 on my YouTube channel. And that's done. So I'll be releasing that every day until The Last of Us 2, and I'll do a full blind playthrough, which I've never done before, for any game.
Man, this overachiever over here, Jason. What are we doing with our lives? Fucking nothing.
I'm just a fat fuck. That's what I am. I just get mad at everything and criticize.
It's true. That is all you do.
So then you balance us out.
If you liked
But
this...
hey, man, I've been getting on that bike doing that Atkins diet. Trying, okay?
I believe in you to try. If you liked this episode, please like the episode on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, share the episode if you would please. If you're listening on to us on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate a rate and a review. 5 stars preferred. Review. Say whatever you want as long as it's not hurting my feelings. That's totally fine. If you want to see something in the future, please leave a comment. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see, whatever. We just want to hear from you. Another place you can talk to us is the Facebook group. We have a Facebook group. You can find that at Dead Cell Media. You can find me on Twitter at Nibelheimian. You can find Delaila on Twitter at Assassina_San.
Yeah.
You can find Jason on Twitter at SolidQuaz, but don't follow him. He doesn't do shit on Twitter. I don't think he knows what Twitter is anymore.
I've got an app on my phone called Blabber.
The next game, I said it close to the top of the episode. The next game we'll be covering is The Last of Us Part 2. Can't really give you a timeline on when to expect that. I would say sometime in the middle.
It's supposed to be a long game, apparently, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, we all have busy lives in our quarantine living spaces.
Yeah, and especially with me picking up the pace, finishing these games, and these two motherfuckers taking their sweet ass time.
Yeah. Well, I hope you look forward to that. I hope you play the game before you come to us. If you come to us, we'll tell you to go play the game anyway, and we can't wait to talk to you again. See you next time. Thanks for listening.
Peace out.
Bye-bye now.